You're on mute. You can do Alt Y, or you can hit the little mute, the little microphone in the corner.
Not yet, not yet. And there's, you still have a red microphone icon on you, meaning you're still.
Okay, I was having trouble getting my screen up.
There you go.
No problem.
Okay. Oh God, it's full of stalkers. This is going to be a Q&A driven class mostly. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ellis O'Byrne. I have been in the SCA since 1973, raised children in it. I have been the Kingdom's Herald, Seneschal, and Exchequer. I've been Kingdom Lists. I was the first West Kingdom War Marshal, the one who said, but all the fighters want to fight. Why don't we get non-fighters trained as marshals? I've been on the board. I have been the Society Seneschal, and I'm still standing. I have never actually burned out on participating. And there's something that I think everybody who's involved in service really has to watch. It's easy to burn out. So, anybody have questions? Because that's what the class is called, is Go Ask Eilis, not Ellis will tell you.
And if you don't know, you'll make it up.
That is my secret peerage power, making up plausible answers.
You got to sell it. You got to sell it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can start things off. All right. I am not worthy of Ellis. Ellis, you may remember me, Doña Teresa Gabriela de Montoya y Sevilla, Baroness, and now, since you've known me, a Pelican. I was your deputy for a period of time back in the early 2000s. And there is a lot that has changed since then. And for those of us who have taken a couple of breaks here and there, I had a daughter who, after about age 11 or 12, was not interested in the SCA and didn't, and for whatever reason, she took our focus away from the SCA, and so we took a break. And coming back to it, there are so many changes, and the thing that blows my mind the most is the reduction of the removal of the paywall of how to get to your newsletter and how this will or will not affect member recruitment. And how can we promote this as a benefit to our membership while still enabling newcomers to see the benefit of paying for membership?
Basically, the newsletter as a benefit of membership was no longer functional because most people were getting most of their information about events from
Online.
Facebook. And there was no reason to be a member if you were willing to pay if you did not insist on the membership discount to attend events, I think is the current politically correct way to say that. If you didn't care about the extra $5 and you only went to 3 or 4 events a year, there's no reason to be a member. Therefore, putting it behind a paywall wasn't driving anyone to the site. Now, having access to the information for all the kingdoms on the site drives more people to events. And if they aren't members, every one of those non-members is paying $5 at the gate for every event. I'm going to be very curious to see how the financials balance out after a couple of years. I don't know why the board decided to get rid of the paywall. There's somebody on here who might be able to give a more a cogent actual answer on that. But it may simply be that it was more trouble than it was worth at this point in time.
Okay, well, you know, as we're discussing things with newcomers, and trying to encourage memberships down the line, you know, okay, my lord and my lady, you've been to 5 events now. What do you think about membership? What do we say to them as what is the benefit?
Benefit of having a national corporation. 1, insurance. We at one point looked into insuring an event, and it would have cost approximately $5 per head for each person through the gate to cover the fee for the insurance with the attendance we expected. It means that the insurance costs for the number of events as a whole would skyrocket. Having a single company buying the insurance and coordinating it makes it a lot cheaper for every single event.
Right.
That's the big one, because there are so many places that will not rent sites now if you're not insured. Their standards. And even if you have to pay I think it's $50 to get the additional insurance certificate, that's a hell of a lot cheaper than the hundreds of dollars it would cost to get the insurance.
Yeah.
The other one is the universality of the rules. Yes, there are differences that, for example, affect fighting in each kingdom, but the base set of rules that govern the society are universal. So a fighter can go anywhere and expect the fighting to be consistent, if not exactly the same, similar enough that once they're told the differences, they can cope. And just the knowledge that you can go anywhere in the world pretty near. You know, there are places that there is no SCA, but we had a friend years ago. They had gone to a family reunion in Texas from California. They were driving back. They were in a horrific car crash. She was in the hospital for months. The local branch took in her husband and her mother, put them up, fed them, took care of them. They went every day to the hospital to visit her. The local SCA people did. They put on a demo at the hospital so she could be pushed to the window and watch the fighting.
Oh.
That's what it gives us, is family all over the world. I hope you never need it, but it's there if you do. I have slept in more people's houses than I care to tell you.
Hopefully not on the floor.
When I was younger, on the floor.
Well, right, of course.
When
that's
they
what
were
we did.
younger, I had an entire barony travel up to 12th night and stay at my house. It was like 40 people. They were wall to wall on the floor. But we left paths to get to the bathroom. And it's not as usual. As more of us have more money, we have discovered the beauty of hotel rooms, but it's still possible.
LSC has her
Who
hand.
has a question?
So I kind of wanted to go back to the newsletter thing, because those of you who know me, I get a little excited about chronicler stuff.
Mhm.
So when I was chronicler, take a drink. So I was Kingdom Chronicler at a time when we were really come to the point where we recognized it should not be behind a paywall anymore. And there were several reasons for that. One, because as Ellis pointed out, it's not really a recruitment tool, and it hasn't been for a very long time, because all of that information is available online. It's available on the website, Facebook. It's widely distributed. But when it's not behind a paywall, it actually becomes more of a recruitment tool, because a lot of people, when they first sign up, they're not paying for that membership. And being better, that's not behind a paywall anymore, being able to give them that information all in one place, and being able to show them the other things that are in the newsletter sometimes, is a great recruitment tool. But like I was saying, it was kind of to the point when all of the information was people's fancy anymore. But the people who do get the paper copies, they're still paying for those. So.
Mhm. Other questions?
Okay, I wanted to know. Hi, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Agnes. Ellis, tell me how you got in the SCA.
I got into the SCA. My very first event was a June crown. Paul and Carol were on the throne. My children were 1 and 4. I called, I was living in San Francisco at the time. Excuse me. And I called a friend in the South Bay and said, we have been under the fog for the past week and a half, and the children are driving me crazy. I need to get out of the house. She said, oh, I've been getting a newsletter for a group, and they have a thing this weekend near Berkeley. It sounds like fun. Do you want to go? And I said, can we bring the kids? And she said, yes. So we packed up her kids and my kids and my husband, and I wore, since we had to have an attempt at medieval costume, I wore the maternity evening gown that I had made for a formal event the last time I was pregnant. And we cobbled together costumes for the kids, and we went to a June crown in 1973, where Henrik won, Henrik of Hung. And it was interesting. It was almost my last event. I went up to someone in a really stunning dress and said, "My lady, that is a beautiful gown," trying in my introverted way to start a conversation with somebody. And she said, "Yes, it is, isn't it?" Turned around and walked away. And I walked away from everybody and found a tree and sat down behind it and started to cry. And bless her heart, a very kind woman followed me and knocked on the tree and said, "What did she say to you?" And I told her, and she said, "Don't mind her, she's a bitch, everybody knows it." And it's a miracle that I did not wind up with peer fear from that, because that woman was one of the very early Laurels and was a countess. But fortunately, I was saved. Or unfortunately, depending on how you feel about me. So that was my first event, and that was pretty much it. I sort of fell into the rabbit hole and never bothered coming back out.
Well,
I
thank
can-
goodness.
I can actually name the two people that kept me and my friend in the SCA. It was like our second event, a Yule for Barony. And we went to sit with the archers because we had been doing archery at the university. And we were chatting with the archers, and two people that we had never seen before came, moved us down and sat between us and the archers and turned their backs on us. And my friend and I and my kids were packing up our stuff to leave because that was more than I could handle. And Gwyneth and Etienne, who lived in our barony at the time, stopped us and had us come and sit with them. So I can actually name the people who made all the difference. Their kindness kept us participating. That simple act of kindness makes all the difference.
Yep. Yeah, I can name the people in my case, and I will name the one who was kind to me. It was Carol of Bellatrix, and she was queen at the time.
Ah, there you go. See, kindness matters.
Yeah, it really does.
If they had a Laurel Council
Ask
meeting,
if nobody has things they want to ask. Alistair?
I suspect that the Laurel meeting may have been interesting. If they had one.
Oh. One thing I would like to see a kind of more general discussion of is avoiding burnout, because I've never had it. And one of the reasons I think I haven't is that I am really determined to go to the small events where I'm not working and I actually have a chance to talk to people, because that reconnects me with why I'm doing this. That's my biggest tip. The other one is travel, but not everybody can afford that. Anybody else?
Yeah, we talked about burnout in Elise's class yesterday. Elise Gray. Not much, but a little bit. And yeah, that's my thing, is that I always pick one event that I don't work. Well, I did until I took over Vesper, because that one event was my birthday event, which was always October Crown. So
But even then at Crown, everyone's busy. At Golden Rivers Championship, I get a chance to actually connect, maybe even to people I don't already know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is carrying around a pocket full of tokens and handing them to people who make a difference to me at an event. And I've seen people carrying them years later. And boy, that feels good.
Alice, is it okay to do that? I'm sorry. Raise my hand.
Go for it.
Well,
Is it okay to do that, to give out tokens if you don't have a peerage? Because
it
I mean,
is
I do that with
okay
my
for
friends.
anybody to give a gift to anyone at any time. And what you're giving them is a gift that means something to you.
Okay. Because I've always done it with my friends at Penzic, let's say, but I didn't know if it was okay to do that because I don't. Thank you.
Very, very rarely. There are times when there is an A&S display and it specifically asks that the laurels leave tokens. That means that the laurels are requested to, but nobody has been forbidden.
Yeah, I think that's where I first saw that happening. It was at a arts and sciences display. And I was like, that's a really cool idea to have something to say thank you or I appreciate you, to people.
Yeah,
That better.
I carry, in fact, Fleeg gave me a bunch of little owl tokens to give out as gifts. And that was, I think that was before I got my peerage. So, but I've always carried something to give out as a token of appreciation.
Alistair's got her little bear heads.
Yeah.
Thank yous are never a bad idea.
Grandma was right. Thank you notes. No, really.
Yeah.
Hey, Ellis, I have a question.
Okay.
Any idea who made this one? This is the silk satin thing.
Which one is it?
It's
not
the
cloth one, is it?
It's the one it looks like it's a shot silk on the inside.
Oh, it's not shot silk. If it's the one I think it is, it's basically lining satin.
Ah, okay.
The cheap stuff. But it was back before the cheap stuff was as cheap as it is now.
Right.
No, there's a Herald's banner running around made out of the old-fashioned eyelash cloth.
Oh.
It's almost like
No, there isn't. It died an unfortunate early death.
Oh, good.
Oh.
Oh, you mean like the seneschal's cloak made out of 100,000% poly critters that blew off the back of a pickup truck?
Uh-huh.
And I almost got into an accident going really fast around corners to avoid the guy who was trying to give it back to us.
This thing's not that bad. This thing is actually reasonably acceptable as a cloak, but yeah.
Oh, that's a cloak, not a bag?
This is the cloak.
Okay.
This is that cloak. And only reason I've got it out is that it had a stain right there.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't think there's a stain there anymore. It needed something to cover it. I couldn't get the stain out. I don't know what it was. It was probably Sharpie.
Yeah.
Then alcohol would have taken it out.
True, but
Not always,
But it
but
probably would have taken the dye out of the fabric or just.
possibly.
out of the trim, yeah. Dissolve the trim.
Okay, I have a question. Why are some of the baronies provinces instead of being a barony? I've heard Golden River's kind of a little bit, but just curious on why did they choose to be a province versus a barony?
Because originally there were no baronies. Originally, the Berkeley, Sacramento area was the West Kingdom. Baronies were formed in other areas to be a royal presence when the center of the kingdom and the usual home of the king was hours away. So when the West Kingdom started expanding up and down the coast, there started to be baronies. Before that, there were provinces and shires, and that was it. Golden Rivers was one of the first baronies. The Sacramento branch was originally a barony. And they went through 2 or 3 barons. And then there came a baronial selection process that almost killed the group. It got so bitter. And they decided to switch to being a province. Silver Desert started as a province and stayed as a province.
Yeah, the Silver Desert people have pretty much said, don't even use the B word around us.
Right, and the same has happened in Sacramento a couple of times since then. People have said, Golden River should be a barony and I should be baroness. And yeah. And so Southern Shores is a province. Westermark became a barony because it was a very tight group that had an agreement on who they wanted to be baron. Vinhold became a barony because they were just far enough away and outside of things enough that they wanted somebody up there because they kept scheduling their events on the same weekend as other branches, and the crown didn't get there. Tarnmist and Alicia were natural baronies. Darkwood put together 5 groups to make a barony. Charismatic leader, Sebastian. And does that answer that question, or should I keep going? Okay. Oh, Nissa, I recognize that building behind your shoulder and I miss it.
Yeah. Me too. It'll be there again someday for us.
Yep.
You must vanquish this vile pestilence.
I'm doing my
think the point of fear behind the barony for Golden Rivers is no longer a significant factor anymore. So if they decided to go that route, somebody might bring it up again and go, well, you know. But I don't think it's a good idea for Golden Rivers. I don't think it's a good idea. And I live in I live in what is now, once again, Golden Rivers. Technically, I live in Bethany Wood, but Bethany Wood doesn't exist anymore.
The thing is, every time it was raised in Golden Rivers, the people who were raising the question were perceived as raising it not for the good of the group, but to raise their profile in some way or another.
Gotcha. Kitty.
Cat for the win.
Let me see what's there.
Hi, Shale.
The chat was just talking about sleeping over.
It's not the cute end. There's the cute end.
Oh, you're bringing the cat?
It is her showing you that you must love all of her, both ends. Everything.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay,
her
but
end.
If it's because you've been to a lot of the wars, Kingdom Wars, if somebody had, let's say, $3,000, I don't know, some amount of money, what war would you suggest them to go to first? A big inter-kingdom war. Assuming money wasn't the issue. I mean, if they could fly to Pennsic or drive to Pennsic or whatever.
Or fly to Europe or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Penzic is my favorite thing to do every year, but Gulf Wars is my favorite SCA event. I'm not sure I would actually call Penzic an SCA event in the same way. It is more like 15 SCA events, a couple of different conventions, and a small chunk of Burning Man crammed onto one site. And I actually advise people not to go unless they have experienced Penzic people to go with who will show them around. Because more people have had bad experiences at their first Penzic than have had really good ones. Gulf Wars is fabulous. Someday I want to get to both Rowaney Festival in Lockhawk and Double Wars in Drachenwald. They're on my bucket list, along with Lily's, War of the Wings, and Battlemore.
I have friends at each of those places, so that they're on my bucket list as well.
Mhm.
We went to Penzic. I've been twice, and I had a wonderful time both times. But truthfully, the heat is a problem for me, so I probably wouldn't do it again. But the first time I went, I wanted to touch all of the stations of the pilgrimage, and so you have to have the holy chocolate milk. You have to shop. You have to volunteer. You have to take a class. More chocolate milk because chocolate milk.
Not anymore. Not
At the
they
time,
lost that dairy.
that's very sad.
Yeah, I know.
You need to go to a party. So I did all of those things, and not being a drunken brawl kind of party person myself, I ended up going to the Hafla. And the musicians were amazing and the dancers were stunning. And there are two dancers that stood out. One was a young woman who was easily 8 months pregnant, and she danced. The grace was amazing. She was the most graceful dancer I'd ever seen, even heavily pregnant. And the other one was a young woman who had a baby in a sling on her hip while she danced, and the baby slept through the whole thing. And I remember that after all those years watching these dancers, and it was lovely. And of course, as I said, the music, the musicians were amazing. So I got my party, and it was a dandy. Got to do all of those. Got to touch all of the stations of the pilgrimage.
Eleanor.
So a comment and then a question. I have been the person who was with 10 Penzics under my belt and a new person wanted to go, was the person who kind of showed them around. It seems to have stuck because Bronwyn Rose of Grayling, aka Bros, seemed to have done all right with that. The question is, tell us about KHTI, how it came about, where we are now. Once this vile pestilence has been vanquished, are we ready to start having events there?
Okay. KHTI was formerly known as the Land Fund. When I joined the SCA, one of the first events I went to was called the Duke's Dinner. It was a feast. The profits for the feast were divided between the Land Fund, which was going back then, and the newsletter. It grew and grew and grew very, very slowly. I personally got involved back in the 80s. We were already having the Ducal Prize tournament, and I kind of took it between my teeth and shook it hard and kind of changed how it was organized. And we started making a substantial amount of money just in time to invest it when interest rates were rising. We got a bunch of money together. We got people who knew what they were doing financially to invest it. And we wound up with enough money to buy land, which we bought in AS 50.
Yep, just before Golden Belt.
Since then, we discovered that raising money to buy land and owning land are two different animals, that counties have really interesting planning commission meetings. And we now have a well on the land with a pump and a holding tank, which the firefighters have permission to use in case of fires. We have a road down, which means that the cars will not automatically either have to be all-terrain vehicles or bottom out. And we have started we have filed for the conditional use permit, which will mean that we do not need individual permits for each event we hold there. However, COVID happened just after the permit request got filed. Ellie?
Where roughly is the land? I'm just curious.
It is along one of the roads into Yosemite, Highway 140. It is about a half an hour from Merced and about 15 minutes, a half an hour from Merced on one side and 15 minutes from Mariposa on the other side.
Thank you.
117 beautiful acres with a lot of really nice terrain and a lot of really nice meadows. And a creek. So we were looking at doing events there this spring, but COVID, and we aren't going to plan anything until we know what restrictions are going to be set and whether or not we're going to be able to accommodate. You know, if they come down and say, you can have 20 people, we will probably start having work parties. If they say we can have 50 people, we will start doing small, maybe archery or equestrian events. When we're up to 200 to 500, we can probably think about hosting Crowns and Wars.
Lovely.
The landed barons and baronesses of the West met together at 12th Night 2020, except Far West and one of the Alaska baronies. And we were very interested in having an interbaronial war that was more of a mix the baronies together than a barony versus barony thing. And we had interacted with KHTI at that point. We had gotten down the planning process a little bit farther until COVID made us all stop. So when the faucet can turn back on again, we're still ready to go. And we would really look forward to being, one of the, if not the premier events on the new land. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we also had a request to do an equestrian event this spring for a smaller group, and
yeah, that makes perfect sense that it would be something like that as the smaller startup. Yep.
yeah, but it will depend on what kind of size limits we're under for gathering. That was the thing I was worried about, was the first events are going to be stressed unless they are by reservation only, because everybody's going to want to be there.
Completely understand.
Question. What do you think the long-term effect on the SCA is going? What are we going to take out of this period of having been shut down and COVID and everything? within the SCA? What are we going to take away from that, from your perspective?
We are going to take away smaller events for a while, I think. I do not think we are going to see big wars this year. I could be wrong about that. Penzic is still planning to happen, but that's because they need the lead time. If everyone miraculously, if the world became COVID-free tomorrow, they would still have needed the time they're putting into planning now. But they also are being pretty realistic about it may not happen. So maybe we will see events this fall, maybe we won't. I know that both Great Western and Gulf Wars are planned for early October, and Estrella is planned for November. Whether in California seems to be fighting a lot harder than many other places in terms of virus loads and cases and hospitals being overloaded. So we can't say. I think we are going to see a couple of really long-term effects. I think we are going to see more events, because especially for things like collegia, it does allow people to participate who wouldn't ordinarily be able to. I think that, for example, the Herald's meetings in the West have always been held in person. I think we are going to see a bigger component there because we're making the meetings work right now. I do like the fact that people are making connections across the known world that they didn't have before, that only the people who either had to live multiple places or had had the opportunity to travel had connections like that. Now more people are having a friend in the East and a friend in Ethelmark and somebody they can call in Meridies. That is positive. I think we are going to see we may see people more thoughtful about whether or not they are going to enter a crown tournament, because now they have seen that you can get somehow accidentally holding a job like that for much longer than you contracted for. Ellie.
Caid's Alexander and Tahira held the throne for a year. The only advantage they said is that it didn't cost them what it cost the first time, because there was zero travel. Because they stepped up, had crown tournament, and that was the last event Caid had, was crown tournament. So Panza and Catherine were prince and princess for just shy of a year. And it's hard, trying to hold a group together, but there was no financial burden with it for their extended reign.
Alice, Teresa has her hand up.
Tracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to know, at least, what you think of going forward, if we get to the point where the majority of the people of the United States and Europe and other areas and the Southeast Asia, where Australia and whatnot are, what your thoughts are in being able to incorporate proof of vaccination into entering an SCA event. As a private organization, yes, we have that right, but what do you think about that?
I think,
And then I have a follow-up question when you're done with that.
okay. I think that we're almost going to have to do that, because immunization is not a guarantee of not carrying, but we are an aging group. We have people who cannot be inoculated for one reason or another. We have to do our best to protect them. Therefore, doing our best to raise the herd immunity at an event is something we should be looking at. I suspect we are going to see requirements from a corporate level for things like that, especially for larger events. And I am not opposed to them. In fact, I'm in favor of them. And I don't know whether it's going to have any effect on attendance other than people who are not willing to comply with requirements.
Right, right. Well, as another thought, I mean, like the lady before me, I think it's Eilis.
Haley.
Yeah, we talked about this at another class. I think it was yesterday. Our king and queen, our current king and queen, have been reigning since before the pandemic began, because our crown tournament was scheduled for a few weeks after New York shut down. And New York and Pennsylvania both have been very much like California, very restrictive in how they're enabling large gatherings, or, you know, prohibiting large gatherings. Right now, we're still at no more than 10. But I participate in other nonprofit organizations who have found workarounds to that by holding, say, an event that is, you know, New York and Pennsylvania based in Virginia, whose group events are regulations are a little bit more lax, yet still providing security and safety by following all COVID safety protocols, including masking, so physical distancing, etc. And what do you think? Could we hold a crown tournament for, say, Ethelmark in Virginia, in the Kingdom of Atlantia, with you know, reciprocal permissions, of course, if that were possible?
If you are taking people from a high COVID place to a low COVID place, you're becoming super spreaders.
Oh, no. Let me clarify. COVID rates in New York and Pennsylvania have gone down again, and the travel restrictions are such that, you know, that's part of the protocols. You're following all travel protocols going into the state and coming back to your home state, you know, so following all those protocols. But you're actually holding the crown tournament at a different, in a different kingdom, basically.
That would be a call for the board and the society seneschal. To some extent, it makes me a little twitchy because you're trying to bend the rules in your favor. And that's not the SCA way.
Okay. Well, then how about this? What about a notion of a hybrid event where, like you said, reservation only for the active participants who are, say, the crown tournament entrants, and the administrative staff and royalty that have to be there, and then a team of people who are filming it, so that we can have a hybrid crown tournament. So we could run a crown tournament. So poor Leodin and Maynard don't have to be king and queen forever.
That's something several of us have already been discussing as a potential way to go, is a limited participation tournament. But
Would that be allowed? You know, from your
Um,
experience perspective, is that allowed?
when you have a site that only allows so many attendees and you have to pre-register, it's the same kind of situation.
Okay,
You have an event that's only so many people can participate in. And if you aren't pre-registered, you're not attending this event. And pre-registration is limited at first to people in these categories. People participate, the Crown, a certain number of needed administrators, people participating in the tourney. I hope to God we can let the consorts in, you know. But if we're limited to 50 people and we have 35 slots for fighters and they all fill up, well, we'll take a wait list.
right.
And
Right, well-
that's possible. It's not ideal. It's not even really good, but it is
Right.
doable. And yeah, our Crown has been in since last 12th.
Yeah, ours too.
So there it is.
All right, well, thanks. I appreciate your input on that.
We have Kelsey and then Ellie. Is it Ellie?
Ailey.
Haley. And then Ellie said, I'm okay with running it. We're in fact at time, so I'm okay with staying if Ellis is okay with staying. So
I'm okay with sitting and chatting.
So we didn't have a question. We just wanted to say hi and we miss you.
And I want to say is your career as a stunt driver is over. And I'm very okay.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't want to do it again.
No.
And just as a comment, as mistress of the lists for so many years, you pick 35 as the number of fighters you want and not 32.
No, I subtracted 15 for Crown and administrator.
I'm just saying though, 32.
Yeah, I know.
it will be an even, easy number if it happens, just so
No
you
matter what.
no matter what.
Anyway, we love you and we miss you.
Miss you too.
Miss you guys.
All y'all. All y'all.
Plural inclusive.
Yep.
I am of an age when I remember that we had to have our vaccination certificates with us when we went to school and when we traveled. And I am not opposed to that. You still have to have something when you travel. My son did the Peace Corps 5 years ago, and he had to have all of his vaccinations up to date. So they still, when you leave the country, you still have to have certification. But the problem I see is they're going to be easy to counterfeit.
There is that.
I have heard that they are discussing plans to put out an inoculation card that is similar to a driver's license, not easily alterable, with a picture and all that.
Things that can't be
Under
Xerox.
discussion. And that does lead me to believe that it is going to be considered to be acceptable to ask for proof of inoculation. But for right now, my card is living in my wallet.
Mine too.
Because if I need to show it to somebody, I've got it with me.
Well, it's the safest place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I should say I'm happy that I don't have a vaccination record, because that means I'm younger. But I really wish I had the vaccine.
I will tell you, it took me a week of, Alaska went from hospital workers to over 65s. They didn't do the over 75s. They went directly to the next tier down. It took me a week of 2 to 4 hours on the computer every day to get a slot because slots would open and disappear. It's easier now, and I am very proud of the place I am living because we are leading the nation in percentage of population inoculated.
Good.
That does not count military and veterans, who are a substantial portion of the population up here, who are all being inoculated through the military and VA systems. So,
Actually, where I'm at, the people with the VA coverage were inoculated before most everybody else, if they were older.
yeah, and for me, as I said, I spent a week of 2 to 4 hours a day on the phone making an appointment. And Michael called the VA and said, I would like to get my shots. And they left him a message saying, come in Tuesday.
Weirdly, it seems like the VA is somehow more efficient at this than everybody else, which is really strange to hear from everything else you've heard about the VA.
Yeah, except they are used to inoculating people.
Right.
Good point.
They don't have to invent that wheel.
And they have everyone's contact information. So they are calling people who haven't called in yet and saying, would you like to come in for your shots?
I also think that veterans know to contact the VA as well, rather than where do I go if you're just
yes. And I am sure that there are people in other areas who are having different experiences with the VA, but the one up here is very satisfactory.
I sit in this chair every day to go to work, and I am successful at being able to work this way, and a lot of people aren't, which means to me, I'm the last on the list, because as long as I can work from home, I should work from home. It's the people who can't work from home that got to get in and get something done about it.
Okay, is Ella set?
Yeah, let me turn on my camera. Didn't have it on because I'm not wearing garb, but nobody can tell that anyway. I actually wanted to address the Crown Attorney question. I'm the current, for most of you who don't know me, I'm the current Society Seneschal.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. Actually, there was a variance requested earlier in the fall from one of the kingdoms that was very well done. And the only trouble with it was that the infection rates started going up. So the board was not comfortable granting it then, but I was told to tell the kingdom that we'd consider it later if infection rates went down. What they did, first of all, they had a completely controlled site. It was a fairgrounds with a fence around it, only one entrance. So they weren't going to be an attractive nuisance by attracting a crowd. Second of all, they were limiting it to fighters. Concerts were not going to be allowed. They were going to broadcast it, but concerts were not going to be allowed on site. They were limiting it to fighters. This particular kingdom, the Seneschal, told me they typically get 20 to 30 in their crown tourneys, so they don't have a big turnout. Fighters, required marshals, the kingdom Seneschal, the kingdom royal marshal, the crown, and a skeleton crew from the event, limit of 50. Let's see, what else did they have? Only thing that was going to happen was the tourney. There was going to be nothing else. People come, they fight, they go home, or to wherever. They weren't going to provide food. They had a building where you could wash hands. They were willing to look at adding hand washing stations. Masks were going to be required at all times, including fighting, unless you were getting a drink or eating something. And they asked if they could require proof of a negative COVID test. And I asked that of our attorney, and he said, yes, as long as you don't keep records of it. Somebody, not even a check mark, somebody sits there, you show them the proof, they say, okay, I've seen it, and you can go on. And we would have, I took it, I said, I'm not going to grant this on my own without talking to the board first. And so I took it to a board meeting, and that was the December 1st meeting, and infection rates right then were going sky high.
Right.
And so we did not grant it, but everybody agreed that it was about as well done as it could have been. And if it weren't for the fact that infection rates were going sky high, we'd have certainly thought about it. So yes, those limited crown tourneys would be possible. The idea of having a crown tourney in an entirely different kingdom, I hadn't thought about before. And that one makes me twitch for a few reasons, but Okay.
I know.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Do you know at what percentage of transmission rates the board was thinking or seeing as, no, this is too high now. You know, it needs to be below R2 or it needs to be below R1.5 or you
That-
know, R4, depending, you know, if you're in
that level of
Texas.
exactitude never came up in the
Sorry.
discussion. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I don't know how to put the hand down.
I can
Thank you,
get it.
Liz.
I can get it if you need. Fee?
Anybody
Okay,
have anything else they want to talk about?
I do.
Yay!
So I am in the process of outlining a class / roundtable discussion on the grievance policy and mediation in the SCA. And I'm just wondering, since you have so much experience in the society and you've seen how, you know, policies have changed and what our current policies are, you know, what would you change and about SCA culture as well, not just policy shift. What would you change about what you see, you know, with people using the system, and what would you kind of stress to people if you were teaching them about, you know, using the grievance system and mediating situations, you know, whether it's between officers or, you know, peers and populace or what have you?
That's a can of worms. I think the thing I would like every single SCA member to know and remember is that it really isn't high school. It feels like high school a lot of the time, but it really isn't. And a lot of the disputes in the SCA come from people reacting the way they would with high school cliques. The other thing is we are not the government. There are government regulations we are not required to follow, but there are government regulations we are required to follow. And everybody wants to know, for example, when somebody is banished, why were they banished? It was long ago decided that causes would not be publicly given because sometimes it's, well, because they've been arrested for something, but then it turns out they weren't guilty. Now, if we have banished and said, so-and-so was banished for shooting a cop, which has never happened, okay? Let's totally hypothetical. So-and-so was banished for shooting a cop, but it turns out that he wasn't. It was somebody else. The good news never catches up to the bad news. So you've got somebody whose name has been basically tarnished. So it's better to keep it quiet, at least at first, and to wait for final decisions on things. The other thing about mediation is that most people aren't good at it. Most people, okay. I actually am pretty good at sitting down with people and talking things through. The part of the year I dreaded at work every single year was the performance evaluation. And mediation is the same kind of judgy thing. People always feel they're being ganged up on. And they're afraid of it. And I don't blame them. I'd be afraid too. Seamus, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so in my professional life, I've done some conflict resolution through, like, at the workplace, for example. And some of the things that I have employed tactic wise in terms of mediation is to let that person or persons or whatever, each side get their story out, maybe individually, like go listen to them and actually hear them out and let them kind of say everything that they have to say first before you try to sort of interpret or tell them what should happen. And then once you've heard them, be like, okay, well, let's figure this out. Try to remain very neutral, not like taking one side or the other. And then if you're going to try to get them to speak together with you as a sort of third person there, then, make sure that you just don't really say one person's right or wrong, just kind of help lead the discussion a little bit, make sure that both sides are getting their kind of stories, and that if somebody's starting to get too emotional or too revved up, give everyone a chance to calm down and see if you can effectively help them work out the situation on their own with just some help. And then if you are one of the parties to this, it can be very helpful to find somebody, even if that person is just there to take notes or something of that nature. You see what I'm saying? And then especially if you're or if there's like a situation where you're given a performance evaluation that might be critical or negative, that if you have that third person in the room, they're also acting as a witness, to make sure that you are not being, that you're not saying or doing anything that's inappropriate. Yeah.
But on the whole, the SCA has evolved matters of handling interpersonal conflict, which sometimes work better than other times. And anything that can be resolved in kingdom should be resolved in kingdom. Ellie, you're muted.
I wanted to say thank you and good night. I have to carry on with stuff. And I want to say how much I've appreciated being able to chat and to see you all. Bye-bye.
Good to see you too.
Take care.
Following on Ellis's last remark, yeah, don't ask the bod to solve your problems. You may get a result that you did not expect.
Oh, that's for sure.
This goes for any kind of power structure or club structure. If you're going to kick it up the line, you may get an answer that you don't want, that was never possibly on your radar of expectations.
One of the things we said while I was on the board was, can we come up with an option that is not thermonuclear? Because most of the options that are available to the board involve doing nothing or nuking it until it glows.
I also just personally think that the lower the level things are handled, the more comfortable everyone else eventually is. Because you have a lot less pressure, a lot less people just knowing about what's going on in your business, as it were.
Well, I like it. Seamus mentioned, get everybody to tell you their story ahead of time alone. You may discover that there's a huge misunderstanding here. Yeah, he's nodding.
Yeah, no, that happened in a couple of cases, and all I had to do is kind of help them figure out that the fact that they're, and I told them, oh, I don't think that's the way, that's what they were thinking. And then once they talk it out and they could both kind of express what's going on, they, in place of two of my supervisors one time, they couldn't get along. That, it was just a misunderstanding. One had certain intention, the other one misread that person's demeanor,
And in addition, many of the conflicts in the SCA are simply because you're putting together people who are strong-willed, are sure of their path, and you get two of them and it's like this, and it's going to be like this, and you just have to make a space between them. There are people whom I've clashed with over the years, and you know, after we don't talk to each other for 5 years, we go back to being friends. And sometimes you just need a break from them. Anyone else have any questions, or should we all go start thinking about dinner?
I had a quick, well, I don't know if it's quick. We'll see. It may require long stories. I don't know. But I kind of wanted to hear from you. It's a two-part question. First part is, what is something that was done in the years, your first years in the SCA, that you miss? And what is something that you love about the modern SCA? That's the second part.
One of the things that I actually miss is something that came up in the previous panel that we were in. When my children were young, they ran with a pack. And I don't see that happening anymore. I do not see the children moving as a unit. They tend to stay more with their parents. Once kids were like walking really well, they ran with the other kids. And that was, you know, the teenagers took care of the younger kids. And the world was different then. And I acknowledge that the world was different then. But I still miss that. I miss seeing the children, like 20 kids, run past the Royal Pavilion at full speed while bowing.
Up till about 10 years ago, some of that kind of stuff was still going on, where what they would do is get together in a group, retire to someplace off the main field and do role playing and stuff when we had a large number of children and teenagers running around.
This was a large number of children going off into the woods, knighting each other and having their own crown tourneys with sticks, though. That wasn't role playing, that was adult playing. They were playing the same game the adults were.
Well, you just need to encourage them to come back into it, get the foam weapons, be someplace where we can see you and go have fun. Find a shade under a tree. And if I was in eyesight of my kids, or I knew what direction to look to probably find them, I felt comfortable letting them roam.
The kids
I
are
would
still
have
roaming.
been kicked out of several different kinds of events because of their children rules for doing that currently. But you know, depending on the age, and I lost track of them, well, once or twice when one of them ducked into a tent and didn't answer to his name being called because you couldn't hear him over the rally car races. Yeah, we don't use that site anymore. But in general, I could find my child and get them back into camp when necessary. And I needed to know from them, okay, if you're going to go off and play, I want to know what direction you're in. After that, free form, which we can, especially with fenced sites and stuff like fairgrounds and things, there isn't a whole lot of chance of getting off site accidentally. This is possible if you don't have the one-on-one supervision rules that you do at large wars.
The kids are still roaming. Unfortunately, they are not always involved in productive or good things, shall we say. Crown, the last crown we had, we encountered a small group of children who were, kicking dirt into at an Aiden's kitchen, because your kitchen was set up off to the side. Yeah. And they got I started talking to them first, and then one of the kids was kept doing it. And here comes Sven around the corner. Who's your dad? I'm like, okay, he just pulled out dad voice. I'm out.
Yeah, it occasionally goes awry. We encountered several years ago a toddler of about 3 walking across the back of the archery range. His sister of 7 was supposed to be watching him. It wasn't working. I took both of them back to their campsite and had a talk with their mom. Because I was running the archery range at the time, therefore it was my responsibility. She didn't
7's a
like
little
having the
too
talking
young.
to, but it's like, hey, if you're not watching your kids, technically you can be asked to go off site and leave
Mhm.
because your child got into a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
I remember
There has to be an understanding with the kids of what they're doing. The sister was distracted. And the comment from the mother is, well, there's teenagers there watching for my kids. It's no problem. They're actually supervised. And I mentioned 2 of those teenagers are mine, and they have no interest in watching your kid.
Uh-huh.
I one remember being in packs of kids when I was younger, but 2 also, kind of along with what everyone else has been like saying, is that sometimes you get those kids who get lost in the woods, maybe literally. You have to go out into the woods and look for them and bring them back,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Agnes, what was the second part of your question?
What is one thing that you really enjoy about the modern or the now SCA?
Okay. I personally am not wild about the ESCA. I have trouble relating to a lot of people online, and that's just me. But some of the classes that have been held have been fabulous. And I would like to see, especially the virtual collegiums, symposiums, whatever you want to call them, continuing. I like the fact that people from multiple kingdoms can participate and that everybody's knowledge grows that way. I think that would be worth continuing.
And then as far as like the modern SCA, also even like the in-person parts of the modern, is there something that you
Credit
like
cards
about
at the gate. Credit cards at the gate are a fabulous thing. Because when you're sitting at the gate and somebody comes up and they say, "Oh, I don't have any cash. Here's my card," and you had to say, "We can't take cards. You can go 30 minutes down the road back to town and find an ATM and get cash." That's hard to say to a car full of people. Don't you have a check? No, I've never had checks.
Pre-reg.
Pre-reg and taking cards at gate. And the West Kingdom has never had a strong culture of pre-reg. We've had a strong culture of show up, pay your money, walk in. Seamus.
Okay, so Ellis, if you had to give 3 pieces of wisdom, 3 things to really keep in mind, whether it's for now or just in general for the future, what would those 3 things be?
The 3 things that are on the cards I hand out at vigils. Number 1, you're going to be the first, let's substitute SCA member that somebody new is going to meet. Be a good SCA member. Be a good example. Don't make me have to come after you and kick your butt because you scared somebody away. Number 2, within your means and your ability, travel as much as you can, because people who have been in longer are the ones who carry the culture of the kingdom. And we can't blame people for not knowing what to do if we don't teach them. And third and most importantly, never pass up a chance to use the privy.
Hey, Teresa, do you still have your question?
Yes, I wanted to say good night because it is getting close to my bedtime. So thank you so much, everyone. Ellis, everyone, the West Kingdom is the almost best. And we love you here in Applemark. And I cannot thank you enough for all the work that you all have done. Thank you. Night.
Good night. See you again soon.
I hope so.
Oh, she left already.
And do we have more questions or can we all go get dinner?
I will ask questions all night if you guys want to. So, yeah.
It's up to
I was gonna
Alistair.
say, Seamus can ask questions till the
Well-
cows come home.
Well, I personally would like to end it just because your last point of don't ever pass up to use the privy.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for showing up. I hope you got some good out of this.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I hope to see you again sometime in the near future as possible.
I hope so too,
Good to see your face.
all of you.
Okay, make sure you get
Thank
out
you,
of the
Grace.
meeting. Because I'm gonna tell Elsie we're done, so.
Okay, Alistair?